Hey, I welcome you to this channel. I'm Mr. Review, and this is Save Your Money Reviews. Today we'll be doing a review on the highly anticipated video game Mortal Kombat 1, the story per se, and I'll give you a little brief overall feeling about the gameplay as well. I will be giving you my honest and unbiased review, being objective instead of subjective, delivering the best reviews right here for you. I'll tell you what I like, what I disliked, and what they could have done to make it better. Let's get to it. Now, I'm sure if you're a Mortal Kombat fan, you can relate to this 100%. Mortal Kombat 11, there was, I would say, a small amount of people who disliked a lot of the things they did with it, but for the majority of MK fans, I think we were satisfied with the product in the overall sense. Gameplay wise, they definitely enhanced it compared to the previous games. Now, again, there was a small gripes about combos, things like that, but nothing major where you felt like the game didn't deliver the price tag. Story wise, in the overall sense, they delivered something great, something compelling, and something they have never done before as far as a story. Mortal Kombat 11 was just definitely a step up from the last previous games. Definitely, I would say more so in the way it looked. If you look at the characters and compare them to the previous games from 11 to 10 and 9, you'll see a huge difference, a huge advancement, and a huge growth for the characters. So I think that kind of again made you feel like you were getting something brand new, refreshing, something that had creativity behind it, something that had passion behind it, something that felt that reinvented in a sense the image of Mortal Kombat. And I guess in my opinion, I felt like it brought it to mainstream a little more hardcore, like it solidified it. So I believe that they did everything they needed to do with MK11 for the most part. Now I would say the things they did get wrong with MK11 as far as story wise, and I would say fighting wise, they could have added more combos to that, more different looks overall. But again, they enhanced the system where I felt like it was definitely an upgrade from the previous. And then story wise, of course, we got Aftermath. Now with that, there were some things in there that I felt like they were doing too much. Like when they redid Sindel's history, her background, her backstory. That wasn't a good look. That wasn't a good decision. So they messed up there. And then also, the Sindel and Shell Khan relationship kind of ruined the aftermath for me personally. I'm sure a lot of MK fans out there can relate to that, what I'm saying. But it just kind of made it a little bit cheesy. Even Shell Khan as a character and as a conqueror, he kind of looked a little weird in that situation, how they kind of try to make it a love story between him and Sindel. So that kind of looked at stupid. Then, of course, they had Shang Tsung doing his plot behind all of this happening, and trying to get the crown so he can take over pretty much the whole situation. Again, a lot of that is questionable how they did some of those cutscenes for Shang Tsung getting the crown, and Raiden and Fujin kind of just giving them the most time possible in human history to put the crown on and gain the power that he did gain. So there were some things that I think that took away from MK11's story, that they got wrong, severely wrong. Right, they got a lot right, but some of those mistakes they made were pretty huge and severe. And I think that's the gripes I have about the MK11 story. But for the most part, they did get it right, and for the most part, they did deliver an exciting experience with MK11. So that's what, for me personally, got me excited for MK12 slash MK1. So let's get into the official review of MK1. So of course, going off of some of the things I said, that by nature got me excited for what they were going to do next with the story. Of course, we had the ending where it was more of an ambiguous ending. You had Shang Tsung with his ending. You have Liu Kang with his ending. You didn't quite know exactly what ending they were going to go with. Number one, and number two, if they were to go with either or ending, how would the story go? Of course, with Liu Kang's ending, it seemed like they were going to go the route where they go back to the Great Kung Lao's era, and give you kind of, I guess, in a sense, a beginning story to Mortal Kombat and the Great Kung Lao. But then again, they had the Shang Tsung ending where a lot of the heroes were following him and under him, and he was ruling everything, so you didn't know how quite they were to take that story if they decided to go with that route. So again, that brought a lot of excitement for MK1, a lot of expectations for MK1. So again, that's what gave me my main excitement. I'm not sure if you guys can relate to that. I'm sure so. But that was a big deal for me personally, and I was like, okay, I'm interested to see how they take the story. Now, of course, MK finally came out, and we finally got a chance to see the story. Now, I wanted to touch bases on the gameplay real quick, just a quick reference to that, because this review is really about the story more so than the gameplay. Now, from the jump from MK11 to MK1, gameplay wise, I do see a lot of specific characters getting huge upgrades on their move sets, their combos. Just to reference a few, Scorpion looks amazing, feels amazing as far as fighting. Sub Zero, again, they outdid themselves with his move skills and sets. I believe they did a great job also with Shang Tsung. I believe they did a great job with as far as his move sets and of course, how it looks. And then, as an honorable mention, of course, Raiden. I believe he definitely seems very godlike on here, even though he's not a god. Story wise, I feel like this is the most godlike move set I've seen him with, in my opinion, out of the Mortal Kombat between the last 3 to 4 games they've dropped. I felt like Raiden looks pretty cool. His animation styles for his moves, the electricity, how he does it, how he delivers it, it just looks upscaled. It looks great. It looks like an upgrade compared to again what I've previously seen. So move wise, imagery wise, animation wise, I believe it's definitely an upgrade. They added combos back into this where I feel like the combos are comparable to MK, I believe 9 that everyone liked the most. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a specific game that everyone liked the combos a little more than the following games. But again, I feel like gameplay wise, it looks amazing. Now, as far as the graphics alone, just speaking on graphics alone, I feel like for it to be a exclusive next gen game, I don't feel like the graphics was at a point where I was satisfied completely. It's definitely an upgrade, but it's like a small upgrade. It doesn't feel levels above the previous graphics on MK11. That's my opinion about that. Again, guys, if you feel different, let me know. But I felt like the graphics they could have did a lot more, and also noticing that with a lot of current gen games that, in my opinion, the graphics don't justify the price tag and what you're paying for and what you expected and what you look forward to. As far as when you go to generational jumps from systems, you expect a huge upgrade on the graphics and just the look, the overall look and polish of the game. I feel like lately, now again, they still have time to kind of continue to show us what they have, but lately I feel like the last few big titles we got, the graphics weren't a huge upgrade, a huge jump from the previous generation. That's my opinion on that. But again, speaking specifically on this, let's stay on topic here. Mortal Kombat 1, I feel like the graphics are a step up, but not 10 steps up, you know. And when you go from generations, you expect at least 10 steps, if not more, with the jump in graphics. But again, it looks great. It looks polished. It looks clean. It looks definitely defined as far as the backgrounds, the levels, characters. They look clean, 100%. I would not deny that. So let's get into the story for Mortal Kombat 1. Let's get into the things that I did like about it. So as far as story wise, there's some changes. They made a lot of changes, of course. You guys probably can see that obviously Scorpion and Sub-Zero are brothers. In the previous games, that was not the case. Of course, in this one, they made them officially brothers. Now, mind you, Haso Sashi isn't the Scorpion on this game. It's a Kuai Li Lang, which is of course the original the original Sub-Zero, Bihan's brother. So they're officially brothers, and they also use the same exact characters for the relationship between the two. In this game, of course, Smoke is with them as well, which is like the previous game. But again, they give you more of a backstory on Smoke and his history and how he ended up with the Lin Kuei. So again, as far as that when I first heard about the news, that they were going to be brothers, Scorpion and Sub Zero, I felt like it was a little weird. I wasn't sure if I was on board with it, but now seeing the story, to me, it adds another element to it. It adds another relationship and dynamic to it. So I'm okay with that change. As far as another change they did was Kenshi. They gave it more, again, gave him more of a backstory, more of a reason to be in the game. I like that change as far as his family dynamic, his family history, and him trying to receive the blade again through Johnny Cage. I like that aspect. And then, of course, they gave Reptile a little bit bigger purpose as a character and as far as his story. I'm not sure if I like the change 100%, but I do like the direction as far as them trying to give him a little bit more character development, a little bit more history, a little bit more of a deeper history, a little bit of humanity, the fact that he had a family, things like that. So, I mean, there's something there that's great. But again, he just seems like a completely different character than the previous games. Not saying that he had a huge character personality in the other ones, but again, as far as the tone of the character, he's way different on here. So I'm kind of indifferent, but I'm not against it because again, it still adds a deeper layer and a deeper element to the character. So yeah, I mean, I like the decision for them to also not make Shao Kahn as powerful as he used to be, as big, as strong as he used to be. I kind of like that dynamic. It makes sense, as far as if Liu Kang's running the timeline. If you're gonna put him in the game, you have to do something differently. He's not just gonna let it be the same. Same thing with Shang Tsung. I like the fact that he's kind of like a normal citizen on this game initially. So again, that's some great storytelling in my opinion. That they added another layer to. Liu Kang would have to address some of these big villains. He can't let them be exactly as powerful as they used to be. So it makes sense for him to alter things with the villains. Now let's get into the things that I felt like they messed up with the story. Now with the story itself, again, I was very excited for it. Felt like it was going to be a great opportunity for them to finally deliver a clean, fresh retake of everything and kind of get all the things right that they didn't get in the past. That's what was the expectation. I feel like for a lot of people who waited for this game. In this case, it was underwhelming for me as far as the story. The beginning was a little slow. The Lin Kuei thing where they showed up at the diner. Um, starting trouble, but it was scripted in a sense. I was cool with it, but again, wouldn't it, in my opinion, wouldn't have been better if that was really the truth? Like they were out here extorting people and kind of, doing some things that they shouldn't be doing. I felt like that would be a little bit more appealing, but again, that's like a small gripe compared to the overall problem with the story. Just wanted to throw that in there. Also, the opening scene with Johnny Cage, don't kind of like on his Indiana Jones. I felt like they could have made that real too. Some way put that in the story where it made sense, and then make some of those things a reality instead of just a scripted movie role or whatnot. I'm not against it. Again, it still made sense for the previous timeline leading into this timeline makes perfect sense for it to be that. But again, I felt like that was kind of an appealing story part and concept as well. And if they found a way to write that into the story where it was real, I felt like that would add another layer and element to the story as far as taste and seriousness. Now moving forward, so some of the things that I feel like were really hugely wrong with the story was number one. I get why they felt like Chronica couldn't be the villain again, in a sense. Like, I'm not mad at that, but if you're not going to make Chronica the villain, you have to come with a even bigger villain or a bigger story situation where it makes you feel like it's justified for a new villain. In this case, they did give us a tease. Now, again, if you haven't played the game, this is spoiler alert. Please exit the video because I'm about to get into more detail about the story. Now, as far as Chronica being in the story, like I said in the beginning, and then you find out in the end who Chronica really is. It is not Chronica, it's Shang Tsung. I feel like, okay, cool, that's a little bit underwhelming, but I'm okay with it as long as it makes perfect sense. In this case, they didn't justify the fact that it wasn't Chronica. They could have even, again, just throwing some things out there, not really thinking it out, but it could have even been like a relative of Chronica, like her sister, or maybe a upper being of Chronica, or maybe Chronica wasn't Chronica. Maybe it was like a duplicate of this being. They could have found a way to, again, brought Chronica back, but even stronger, even more powerful, and even more menacing, even more thought out as well, meticulous. They could have brought a better version of Chronica in the story, and I felt like if they wrote it right and brought it in properly, it could have been better than the route they decided to go with. Now, of course, as we all know, the route that they decided to go with was making Shang Tsung the pretty much the ultimate villain in this story. They took the timeline from the previous game, which, like I said, at the end of that game, they leave it ambiguous where Liu Kang wins one, Shang Tsung wins one. We don't quite know which story. So in a sense, both stories are true. Shang Tsung won in one story, and Liu Kang won on the other. It split the timeline into two. It was once one, but they split it into two. So both was true. So in a sense, the same Shang Tsung of that time and the Liu Kang of this time bump heads on this game where they finally get to meet and finally settle the score. Which again, that alone, that idea alone isn't bad. I mean, it could be bad, right? But depending on how you write it, how you deliver that type of story, it could be a good story. In this case, the way they decided to deliver it was very flat, very forced, in my opinion. Very, there was no, in my opinion, again, there was no passion behind this story. The beginning to the middle of the story, you kind of felt like there was some creativity, there was some passion, there was some direction, there was some continuity. And then I would say towards the back end of the story, like the fourth quarter of the story, it fell flat. Like when I say flat, it went super flat, like downhill. Everything they were building it up to be, throughout the story, they didn't finish. It went from hit it to the top of the mountain to going to the bottom of the mountain without even getting to the top. Like it delivers something that is the most superest, flattest story ever. I feel like in MK history out of the last three games that they brought out. It was one of the flattest story, one of the flattest endings, one of the flattest directions. Again, it didn't feel inspired. It didn't feel like there was any passion or creativity or care handled within the story towards the back end, more so than the beginning and middle. Again, in this story, I feel like they could have made so much better if they decided to go with the Chronicle route. And like I said, they could have found 1,000 ways to make that Chronica, but not Chronica. Or again, make it seem like on the previous game, the Chronica that was killed wasn't the actual Chronica. They could have found any way. It could have been a copy of her, like an offspring of hers. This could have been Chronica's mother. This could have been her sister. There's just so many ways you can go with it and write an appealing story. And I don't know if you guys agree, but I felt like Chronica's design on this game was pretty dope. I felt like they did a great update on her look. I feel like this look was better than her previous game look. So I would have liked to see that in full fledged, villainry. Let her come out, let her lead, let her play with the things behind the scenes, get all the pieces in place, and then make her attack. Now, again, if it was up to me, I would make this Chronica a lot way more powerful than her previous Chronica, and I would have made it in the sense where it makes sense to the story, number one, and number two, where once they got to fight her, you felt how powerful and how much stronger she was than the previous Chronica. Like you have to make that very impactful, almost Thanos level as far as like how hard it is to beat her. Even with Liu Kang and his godhood, I would have made it even harder for him to still try to beat her. Now, as we all know, they kind of went with a weird direction towards the back end of the story where I wasn't mad about them needing help, okay? Like Liu Kang needing help, needing more manpower. Cool, great. That's amazing. The issue with that is they decided to make multiple timelines, which again, I thought we were past this time travel thing. I thought we were past all this jumping around and continuity and story and characters. Let's go ahead and start with MK1 and write a clean, straightforward story where, consequences are there. If someone dies, they're dead. If someone makes a mistake, it's permanent. Let's not make a story where we can do anything we want at any moment where there's no real consequences to choices, decisions, characters' deaths. I feel like they're cheapening the whole story, the arc, the story, characters, the mythology, like everything's being cheapened with these time travel slash multi-dimensional things, and it makes it not as impactful for the characters, in my opinion. Also, you want to follow these characters and see their growth, see their development, go through their hardship and their overcomings and all the whole nine. You want to kind of feel like you're involved, like watching a movie, a story, or a comic book. You want to follow the story and it's kind of hard to follow a story, right? If they're throwing in multiple any outings, any escapes from the choices that they're making. But let's get into the exact problem. So they decided to make it multiple timelines, which again I felt like was stupid. They could have just made it to two. The split one, that makes perfect sense. He reset time, it resets everything. There's no other timelines, just one. And then of course with the split situation from the previous game, now we have to find a way to end the threat from that other timeline that's running simultaneously with this one. And I was cool with that. That's more grounded, that's more straightforward, that's more, the stakes feel proper. They feel like it's in line to where it needs to be. Once you go into throwing in thousands and thousands or hundreds of timelines, the stakes kind of feel less. The story kind of feels cheap, and everything just feels now like it doesn't matter what happens because they could jump from any timeline to any timeline at any time, or they can gain any character from any timeline at any time. Not only did they decide to make multiple timelines, but they also decided to make multiple different versions of the same character. So I don't know if you guys peeped it, but like Sonya Blade had like Kano's powers. There was a scene where Kung Lao had Raiden's powers. So everyone, even in other timelines, weren't who they really were purposely to be in the main timeline. So it's cool. Again, I understand they're in different timelines, so it may give them a different background, a different history, a different take. But how about instead of changing their powers into something that we've already saw, how about making them a totally different character within itself? Doesn't that sound more creative, more invested, more good, better for the story? So that was one of the biggest turnoffs I had as far as seeing the multi-timeline situation outside of them having just multiple timelines in general. So again, it was a cheap way, a lazy way to write multiple timeline story, in my opinion. Also, here's the perfect take here. Wouldn't it be more impactful if there was just the two timelines and they recruited themselves from the other timeline? In other words, like Liu Kang tried to get Liu Kang. Also, people who wasn't in the original story, like Sonya Blade, Jax, recruited people from the other timeline, brought them to his timeline for help. Wouldn't that sound a lot better for manpower situation if they needed more manpower? For it to just be, hey, let's recruit what we don't have here, but that's in the other timeline, and bring them here to help us fight this battle. And then vice versa. Now you have multiple Shang Tsungs on the tournament floor. You have multiple reptiles, multiple Johnny Cage. It was just oversaturated. There was no real meaning to it. It felt like a kid's game. Felt like if you got a little kid to write the ending, that's exactly what they would do. Just make multiple characters and make them same versions of different characters and just put them all in one big arena and let them fight. You know what I mean? It just cheapened the whole experience. It cheapened the whole story. It cheapened all the characters' experiences up until that point. It just made it very pointless. Now at this point, you're following multiple characters that you had no history with throughout the whole story within one element of the game. So that again, they ruined the ending. They made a terrible choice because again, I don't know if it's more of a, let's just make some money off this game versus, hey, we care about these characters, we care about the story, we care about building upon what we already set up. Let's start fresh, but also we're not hindered from previous stories. And let's go ahead and make an amazing trilogy of stories. They had an opportunity to do that, and unfortunately, they decided to go the other route, which again seems messy, seems convoluted. It seems like there was no love or passion behind it. They just, again, if you gave a kid an opportunity to just throw in the ending, that's exactly what the ending would be. It felt, again, it cheapened the whole story experience, everything that happened, everything that led up to that point. It just kind of erased it. It made you felt like you played it for no reason. Because again, it was a mess. Now, one thing I'll give them credit on is that a battle arena with the pyramid where they had to climb it up in Armageddon, to get Blaze powers. That setup itself, the way it looks, how it was designed was beautiful. Like it seemed great to see an updated version of that. But imagine if they actually made it count and wrote something great as a story to put the pyramid in. That would have made it an amazing scene, an amazing experience to have. But unfortunately, again, it was cheapened due to the choices they made as far as who you're fighting and the characters and how there's multiple timelines and how there's multiple different versions of the same person but with different other people's powers. Like it was stupid. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can agree with that. They just cheapened the story, and it would have been a lot better if they just went the Chronicle route, but revamped it in a different aspect, a different way where the stakes was higher. That to me versus what they decided to go with makes the most sense to me. Let's stop doing the timeline jumping thing. Let's stop doing the time travel jumping thing. In honest opinion, they should have started the timeline and let Liu Kang destroy the hourglass. Now, again, I know they can write it in the sense where it has to exist. It has to be there has to be a timekeeper, things like that. But also, just as much they can write that, they can write it where Liu Kang found a way to at least block it off permanently where no one could get to it, or not even himself, or destroy it, either or. And then that way the stakes are way higher. Now we're back to reality. Now we're back to if someone dies or something goes wrong, we have to face this. We can't just run to a time machine or jump to different timelines to fix it. Like that's what we want. We want it to matter. We want every character to have to figure out a way to get past something. Again, strong writing. That's what we need for Mortal Kombat. Strong writing so we could feel invested and feel like, okay, I can't wait for the next game and the next game and the next game. Let's see what happens with this character. Let's see what happens with that character. In this case, the way they ended it, no one's no one. Everyone's everyone. So it just there's no really importance to characters, just or story, should I say, for that matter. It's just literally another game, another random story that has no impact on anything. It just happened. And honestly, truth be told, it could have never happened and they still could have made a next game if that makes sense. Like there's no real impact within the story. Now, of course, they did a bonus scene where they added Havoc to that bonus scene. Wouldn't it have been better if they actually held out Havoc into a that like kind of like their aftermath DLC type of thing, because Havoc was in this story. So why did they made it a big deal to bring him at the end credits as the new boss when we already seen him? Obviously, this is a different, this is quote unquote a Titan Havoc version possibly, but again, it's kind of cheap and it doesn't feel justified. It doesn't feel there's no real build up to it. Imagine if they just erased Havoc, didn't have Havoc in the story at all, and then added this extra cutscene where this Titan type Havoc was there and was pulling the strings behind everything. Wouldn't that have been way better, way better introduction to Havoc and the after credit scene? Way more impactful. Now you're looking forward to the next story. You're looking forward to the next step of this new evil that they have to face. You know what I mean? And again, they could have did this with even the Chronica story if they added like the Chronica story instead of going with the way they did it. And if they were going to stick to the story they did, like I said, it should have just been the two timelines. Liu Kang goes to the other timeline to get the characters that weren't in the current game, like the Jax, Sonya Blade, characters like that, and bring them over to help defeat, of course, Shang Tsung, the Titan version of him, or vice versa. If Chronica was the ultimate evil in this timeline, same thing. She's too overpowered. She's too, OP'd. He's gonna go jump to the other timeline to recruit other people to help. He could even have recruited a Shang Tsung character from the other timeline to help in this current timeline, something like that. Where, again, Chronica is really the bad guy. Even they could have flipped it where she had her own version of Gears. This Chronica, you know, maybe the Gears that Liu Kang had was a weaker version of the current Gears that she has. Anything that again could have made the story a little bit more appealing, impactful, and the stakes a little higher. They really cheapened the stakes. They cheapened the the payoff, the whole nine, the story, the characters, the passion. Nothing was there. It just felt like an empty shell of a game once you got to a certain point in the story, and everything you did prior really didn't matter. That's what it felt like. So that's my take on it. That's what I feel like was the thing that made the game again stupid in a sense. We anticipated it to be an amazing story, a restart, a refreshment, a rehash of them correcting all the mistakes they made and brought perfection to this game and the story itself and gave us something that we've been waiting for forever. From the beginning of this whole thing, we've been waiting for a great story where it felt justified, it felt accomplished, it felt finalized. It felt like we can't wait for the next one. MK11 kind of gave us that a little bit. Again, it had its flaws that I spoke of. We thought the one was going to go ahead and get us over the hump of bad storytelling and get us going where now we're invested in the next story. In this case, I don't feel the excitement. I feel like, again, it's just everything was cheapened, even the characters, the fighting, everything, the deaths, the whole nine. So, I don't know what they're going to do to correct this or if they even care to correct it. But that, in my opinion, is the downfall of the new take on this Mortal Kombat, the characters, the story, the whole nine. It was not exactly what it should have been. It wasn't even close, in my opinion, as far as storytelling in the overall sense. There's things that's great about the game. I did mention those at the beginning of this, but like I said, for the most part, they ruined the anticipation, the hype, the beauty that have could have been with the story and with these characters and with this new timeline. And now it just feels like we're back at square one, where now we have to figure out how we can make the story important again. I don't know quite if they can. If it's just all about fanfare and just characters itself, as far as just randomizing everything, then of course they did great. But when it comes down to actual constructive, good storytelling, well put together, well written, continuity, making sense. Everything just feels impactful and important as far as that goes. Is definitely lacking at 1,000%. So again, hopefully, we can find a way to fix this, but I'm not too sure how they will fix it. All right, beautiful people. Don't forget to like and leave a comment. Let me know if you like the direction they went and also other things you liked or disliked about the game. Have a blessed day, guys, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the latest in reviews, news, and updates. I'm Mr. Review, here to help you save, never lose. Toodles.